everyone, I'm Mackenzie. I'm a Montana State University dietetic intern, and I'm here to talk about women in agriculture. I thought this would be interesting because we're all interested in where our food comes from, how it's produced, how local it is, but we don't always think about who's making our food. So I thought it'd be interesting to talk about the role of women on farms today.
So it's actually hard to get a good idea of the involvement of women on farms throughout history because they aren't represented in many photos or stories. And not until recently did the U.S. Census of Agriculture allow for farmers to report on multiple operators of the farm. So before this, if there is a family farm, the husband's name would usually go down. But we know that women have always participated in farming, and they had a lot of participation on the country's first farms. But after World War II, farming became more industrial, and we saw the development of more gender roles in society. So at this point, a lot of women on farms moved away from the fields and more into the role of a farm wife. So this meant that they did more housework and bookkeeping and gardening just for the family. They also became more limited in their roles to make decisions about the farm or to gain knowledge about agriculture.
And this has had implications to today where they still fill roles similar to this. Women are socialized on farms to do more of the farm wife role. They might not have all the decision-making powers that they used to, and they don't have access to all the education that a man or, a son might have. So from the most recent census, we know that 30% of farmers are female, but only 14% of farms have females as their primary operator. So only 14% of farms are owned by women. But this doesn't totally give the full picture, just those numbers. We don't know what it's like to actually be a woman in agriculture just by looking at the data.
It also leaves out the female farm workers, many of whom are undocumented immigrants. There's a significant gender pay gap on farms, and women are often not given as many opportunities to advance. And even more alarming is the rate of sexual harassment on farms. A Human Rights Watch report found that nearly all of the participants who they surveyed had experienced some form of sexual harassment or knew others who had. And while another study of 150 Mexican workers in California, they found that 80% of women had been sexually harassed. And of course, these women are often afraid to speak out for fear of deportation.
So inequalities look a little bit different at every level of agriculture, but they are widespread. I'm going to be talking about women who own farms and who are the principal operators of their farms. So these women face a lot more barriers than men might in the agricultural community.
It's harder for women to find land or get funding to start farms, and this is because farming is still very much about networking, and men are more likely to inherit the family's land, or they'll know someone to buy from.
Women also just haven't been taught how farming works as often as men are. So they've been socialized to do more of the housework and the childcare, and they haven't had all the formal education in agriculture that men might seek out or have access to. Also, childcare plays a big role. So childcare can be really hard to come by in rural communities, and when you do find it, it is pretty expensive. So that puts a lot of pressure on women who work on family farms to take a little bit less of a farming role and to take care of the kids, or to do roles on the farm where they can have the kids close by and it won't be dangerous for the children. So that puts a lot of pressure for them to move off of the fields and into the house. But when looking at women who do own their farms and who are operating it, we still see differences. So a lot of women will report that they don't feel totally comfortable at things like trade shows and auctions, feed mills. They might be overlooked, especially if they're with their husband. People will address the husband and sort of ignore the women. On the other hand, at things like organic feed mills and farmers markets, co-ops, things like that, they usually feel a lot more welcome. And this is because women usually own these operations or they're working at these events. So there's a lot more women there and women feel a lot more comfortable. And so this actually reflects a major observation about women in agriculture today. And that's that they're about 3 times more likely to own small-scale farms, farms that use sustainable practices, organic, value-added agriculture.
And this makes a lot of sense because the tasks on these types of farms are a lot closer to the roles of a traditional farm wife. They don't use a lot of machinery, chemicals, and they're more focused on relationships with the consumers.
So it's great that women are able to own and operate these smaller sustainable farms. However, these farms don't make as much profit as the larger conventional farms do. In the 2012 census, we saw that farms operated by females earned about half as much as farms operated by men. However, when you correct for size of farm and style of farm, it's estimated that women make about 39% less than men do. This is still a huge difference in pay. So while women are empowered in the sustainable, organic, small-scale farm community, they're still second to men in the larger conventional and traditional farming world. So why does this matter to the rest of us? Well, women are usually more likely to farm based on the needs of their community.
A lot of women begin farming as a second career because they saw some gap that they could fill. It benefits us that farmers are responsive to the things people are demanding, especially when these are serving the demand for sustainable foods and goods. Also, a more diverse workforce in agriculture creates a more sustainable industry in terms of ensuring that there will always be farmers capable and willing to feed our population.
It's also important to think about how this impacts gender identity overall. So, female farmers who were surveyed often reported that they were embarrassed about the masculine role that they had. They would be embarrassed to have dirty hands or dirty clothes out in public, which are things that wouldn't really faze a male farmer. On the other hand, a lot of women do feel very strong, independent, and empowered in the fact that they are farmers. So these females are able to change the perception that people might have of what a woman is or what a farmer might look like. So what can we do to support women in agriculture? The first thing is that we need more data. It's hard to tell what the needs of women in agriculture are without having the numbers to back it up. Without these numbers, we don't know how to identify or to solve problems. So getting more in depth on the U.S. agricultural census about gender and the differences between women and men on farms would be a great first step in order to advocate for women. Another great thing about women in agriculture is that there are tons of organizations for women to gain support and to network with other female farmers. Lots of states, universities have extension programs that also provide education and training for women who want to get involved in agriculture. Finally, the biggest change will be seen through policy. So the 2018 Farm Bill has a new program.
It's called the Farming Opportunity Training and Outreach Program, or FOTO. So this program provides loans and assistance to beginning and socially disadvantaged farmers. So this would be veterans, ethnic minorities, and women. It will receive $50 million in funding each year over the next 10 years. So this is a great step towards inclusion, but it's unclear exactly how this money is going to be distributed. So overall, more resources and programs are needed to help women get started or expand their farms. And of course, visibility is a great step in improving the role of women in agriculture. Representation is important for changing the public's image of a farmer as well as to empower farming women to be confident in their roles. It may also help women or girls realize that they want to be a farmer, so they can join the industry as well. We can increase representation by showing female farmers in more photos and media, as well as having more women at farming conferences or on committees.
So while women are doing great things on farms across the country, there's still a lot of progress to be made. I hope this video gave you some information and inspired you to advocate for women and to appreciate the women who do produce our food. Thank you.